Right, we're back for another episode of the Crux of Cardio, and today we've got LVAD royalty with us today. So if you'd like to give yourself a introduction, Louis, that would be absolutely brilliant.
Well, thank you so much first, Jordan, for having me today. I mean, it's delight to be here with you. I'm Louis. I've been fortunate to be in this LVAD space for the last 15 years, so 16 years now. I'm actually definitely not LVAD royalty, they are probably, but I've been very privileged to serve in this space, which is an amazing space where people are completely passionate about basically saving lives, because we're serving patients who are in a life-threatening situation, and so that's very rewarding. And I would say another part is that this is kind of the Himalaya of Medtech. It's one of the most complicated space in terms of engineering. And so from that perspective, it's quite fascinating. It's like you were building a type of rocket. So, everybody, you have like this little boy, a little shy in yourself that really appreciate that type of things. And so I've been very, fortunate to work with amazing investors and amazing teams. So building this. So that's, very rewarding journey so far.
Good. And it was a different story to what you started out with, right? You didn't start in Medtech.
No, that's correct. Yeah, I'm kind of an entrepreneur by background. When I was a teenage, I felt like I wanted to build things that I felt like, I would eventually die and I have to do things in my life. So I started in a very different space, which is more like the web industry. And at that time, we were calling that Web 2.0. And so I started with, a few projects. One of them was actually what we would call today a social network. And that didn't eventually become, it was a local, his own stuff. I was break-even, I was happy. But obviously, I didn't become Mark Zuckerberg, right? So I felt like maybe I missed something there in terms of, turning a good idea into a business. So I went to business school, and then I actually spent some time with a corporate finance boutique to understand, some time of this business dynamics. They were actually former Mars & Co. Consultants. They were very knowledgeable about management consulting and strategy. That was amazing, 6 months. And then went to Sofinova Partners, which is the oldest VC firm in France, and had the chance to work with, again, an amazing investment team. And at that point, I felt like maybe all this internet stuff was a bit mundane, and I felt like the way was passed, which actually was completely wrong, because eventually all of that became very, very large businesses. But I felt like there was probably things that you could do that could help society, and not only just some digital stuff that is more a business than really creating real value. So, and to be perfectly honest, I was attracted more by what we called clean tech at that time. So probably now would be called climate tech. And so that was part of the activity I had with Clipper Finance and Sofinova. And eventually, while I was helping someone to build a microalgae business, I came across a gentleman who was somehow in the LVAD business. A gentleman was a doc, and that's how I fell into Medtech. And I've been there ever since. So back, in April 2010 was that.
And so what do you think initially attracted you to the LVAD space then? Yeah,
I think I was attracted beyond LVAD. I think first I was in this company which was doing a power delivery system for LVADs. And I was attracted by the hardware type of thing. I wanted to do something helpful, like contributing to save the planet or whatever. What was my thought at that time was probably a bit naive and ambitious. But I felt I wanted to be something useful. And for sure, Medtech was there helping people. And so I felt like France, but it's been the same in the US, been the same in most Western countries. We just dropped too much industry. And so Medtech is a fantastic way to develop that type of activities. Although it's demanding, but, getting back to your point of LVADs, so I started as a kind of subcontractor for LVAD company. And the reason why I got attracted to LVAD was that I saw firsthand also companies transform into billion-dollar businesses, and so that this is a very specific market where a new player can definitely build a real business, be independent if need be, And that's kind of unique, that there's not that many business in medtech that become this billion-dollar business. And I would say the LVAD space is definitely a good playground for that. And so why I've been obsessed by billion-dollar businesses is that at Sophie Nova, that was definitely an obsession. So there was not unicorns at that time, but still they were thinking we want to build billion-dollar business. And I think being in that, as an operator in a business that has potential, it definitely makes sense because you have the means to really operate at scale. You can have great teams, you can have big investments, which is not doable if you're on a smaller scale, right? So that changed everything. If you have top talent, if you have real top tier equipment, things like that, because it's just the nature of your business justify that type of investment, which doesn't mean that you don't be agile and not be very penny wise and pound wise, but still.
So for me, what I've already established is you're super analytical. So what did you see in the LVAD space where that opportunity clicked, where you realized, okay, light bulb moment, this is the market that I really want to hone in on? There must have been something that you saw that was either broken or working inefficiently at the time.
Yeah, so as a previous company, we're discussing with different potential LVAD players, and we had a partnership with one of them. And when I was doing it was a very specific business because we would be very dependent on these guys. But when I was doing the competitive landscape, from that point on, CorWave really stood out as potential next generation winner take it all player. And I was like, wow. Actually, I was daydreaming that maybe I wouldn't be CEO of that company if whatever, because I felt this is a completely unique opportunity where you have a technology that has this huge potential to transform that market. And actually, it's a French company, and so that might be kind of the ideal project for me, because I'm trying to reconcile this idea that we want to build manufacturing, something useful, in Europe, France, and something that's going to be that has real that potential. And so that was really clear for that time that this technology was unique, that it could be a huge clinical benefit. And but it was early.
Quite early, exactly. But I guess what do you think's missing from the LVAD space, or has been missing? Because there seems to be quite a few companies now that are really trying to innovate right now, but there was a gap where there wasn't much innovation going on. What do you think's changed, or what have the clinicians been seeing that they need to improve?
So I think one of the difficulty in the LVAD space is that there are huge barriers to entry. So further to my point of being the Himalaya of Medtech, on average, programs take like 10 years to get into clinic. This is crazy, and so there's very few players that can make it. So the consequence of that, there's little innovation because the barrier to entry, like capital, know-how, time, it's difficult to find people that are going to dedicate themselves for such a long period. Makes it very difficult to get in, and then for new players to get in with an innovation. So I think this is really where we're playing. And that then being said, when I came as a CEO and MD started, I started the company, I'd done a great job at curating the technology, curating the clinical need. But that was clear that there were massive clinical need on the adverse events. Everybody was talking about that. And one of the key things we did, and that scientists were doing at the same time, was connecting the dots between the way the devices were operating, which is essentially continuous flow that disrupt the cardiovascular system, and these adverse events. And there's been new science coming out. At the time we were coming out and saying, really, you need to get back to physiologic flow. And so that's what basically was the basic thesis of CorWave from the beginning before I joined. A few things that we discovered along the way is that fundamentally this technology is very different. So right now there are impellers that rotates, and this is creating continuous flow, and it's a lot of inertia. So it's very difficult to modulate the flow. You're kind of operating in the dark because you don't get a lot of signal from that. You get some, but not much. And the membrane is very different because you can modulate it, so you can create a pulse delay. It lets the pressure buildup from the heart to go through the pump, and you can detect what's happening. You can modulate again for pulse delay. You can modulate for exercise capacity, and all of that is new. And so as we develop the program and talk to clinicians, we find that there's a couple of other clinical needs that we could cover. One is the exercise capacity of this patient, which is limited because now they just always get the same flow. So not only it's a continuous flow, but it's also always the same flow. So the flow you need to be seated, but as an individual, you don't spend your entire life being seated, right? So these patients are often sadly very depressed. They don't go back to work. They have no intimate life and so forth, right? So, and that's for a pretty significant portion of the LVAD population. If you could modulate the flow of the device depending on the patient activity, that would be a big change for their quality of life, at least for some of them. That's what we believe and a lot of clinicians believe. And then finally, there's been more and more talks about recovery, which was higher with the first generation device were pulse style, and which for different means looks that we should promote that if we have a physiologic device. And that's the ideal outcome for a patient to get out the pump and he can live a few years. It's proven that they have the same survival as heart transplant if they get the device out and they're well selected. So that's also something that CorWave, some promise that CorWave holds.
Fantastic. And so we've sort of got into it a little bit. It'd be good to have a high level overview of where CorWave are at right now and what they've achieved so far.
Yeah. So CorWave were the first innovative durable LVAD program to reach the clinic since 2014, and Abbott Automate 3, which ever since then the company has been acquired for $3.4 billion. It became the only option available in the US and in Europe. And so we're the first program to get there since then. So it's to give you a magnitude of the barrier to entry. It took us 12, 13 years to get there, which is the Automate 3 program took them 16 years. So it's kind of normal. And that's we really overcome the major barrier to entry. And so we started a clinical program. We're really excited by the results we're getting. So that was late breaking last week in Toronto. So we presented the outcome of the first 3 patients. All of them were transplanted. And we've seen across them a very unique pattern of pulse delay, which is a major, a basic thesis. So and that's really amazing to see that on a constant basis. And that really paves the way to a potential reduction and paradigm shift in this durable LVAD therapy. So all of that was not done overnight, as I was mentioning. So we have a great team, R&D, manufacturing, quality, operations, and so clinical also is growing to undertake all these activities.
Amazing. And you touched on it there, and I wanted to ask you about this. What is it that's so important about restoring pulsatility?
Yeah, so right now, patients are alive, but they have no pulse. And basically, what does that mean is that in your cardiovascular system is not working properly. In particular, if you look at the arteries, they're going to be disrupted in a normal way. They're going to expand and contract, and for example, the endothelial cells that are lining your vasculature, they're going to release in the blood different factors, different things to kind of simplify. And that's not happening with the current devices, and that lead to or contribute to bleeding. Another issue, and there's just a few among others, is that their vessels tend to get stiffer over time, which is a known risk for stroke. And finally, we have we have a very well engineered piece as a machine, as humans. We have pressure sensors that are called baroreceptors, and that these are not working properly neither. So that kind of state of hypertension at all time. And it's just again because these things are triggered by the change of pressure. And so all of that lined up, if you look at the literature, the lack of pulsatility will increase the risk of stroke, will increase the risk of gastrointestinal bleeding. And that's just for the vasculature. Then if you look at the heart itself, the valve tend to not open, so you're going to develop aortic insufficiency over time for this patient, and the recovery rate is going to be very, very limited. And so that's where CorWave is really a paradigm shift, because we're seeing physiologic pulse to these patients, which is something you cannot reach with the continuous flow devices.
Thank you for sharing that with me. And I think it means that we can sort of lean into your core technology then. How did this get created? How did the idea come around, and how is it looking right now?
Yeah, so the idea came from a brilliant French engineer called Jean-Baptiste Drevet in the 1990s, who was really passionate about pumps and came up with that idea, taking inspiration from nature. And it's a remarkable, unfortunately he died a few years ago, but he was really visionary and dedicated to his invention from the day he invented to his death. Amazing individual. And so just maybe to set things in perspective, humans are using pumps since humans are a civilization. Like in the ancient times, what they call the Archimedes screw in the ancient Egypt. Then we got to use some sack. There was actually I don't know what you call that in English, but I'm not gonna get the word, but it's basically the sack that the animals used where you store that's actually a medical term, where you store the urine.
Okay,
You compress them, so they use that. Eventually they use more like sophisticated rotating system starting in the Renaissance, but they never took inspiration from nature, from the fishtail motion, which has been selected over millions of years of evolution as the most effective way to have a living body moving into a fluid. And so his brilliant idea was to say, well, we can inverse the relationship. So if we're using the same motion, but this motion is actually the object which is doing this motion is going to be stationary, there's going to be the flow that moves forward. And that gave birth to wave membrane technology. They got a lot of people excited back in 1990s. No one really mastered technology to the point you could build a product. And eventually, at the turn of the 2010 or something, he met with Sofinova, along with his business partner, Eric Guillemin. There was a gentleman who was my boss actually around that time, Alessio Beverina, who is since then became a partner and co-founder, I believe, at Panacas. So went to Medtech. He saw that this is a really cool technology. It's probably not very interesting for clean tech, and he shared that with his with Manu Iyer, who was sitting in the same office. Manu said, "Wow, that could be a great heart pump." And it took it to MD Start, and MD Start said, "Well, yeah, indeed, it looks really interesting." And they called a blood pump expert to make sure they were not like dreaming or whatever. It was called Carl Bodebusch, who has been in the LVAD space for quite some time. And he felt like, wow, this is the dream machine. That's what we need. It's combining the best of both worlds, like something physiologic but a small footprint. And he advised to invest, to start the program, and he actually joined as CTO, and he's been commuting between Philly and Paris for 10 plus years, up to early this year when he retired. So he's been fundamental to the technology. And then eventually, so Andy Starr took it, and they were great engineers. Sylvain Luquin was an amazing engineer, was the first employee. It was Edouard Ilouz, another one, engineer, and they built the first prototypes, and eventually raised money. And and then I joined. Back in 2015, where there was 5 employees in the company.
I want to take a minute to say thank you to our sponsors, TTP. TTP is a leader in complex medical device development. With deep scientific and engineering expertise, they help medtech teams crack tough development challenges and make the right calls early, reducing rework, delays, and uncertainty later on. Whether you're navigating uncharted technical territory or racing towards market, TTP brings clarity and real-world judgment to the decisions that shape performance, usability, and manufacturability. By retiring risk early and grounding innovation in real-world constraints, they help you move forward with speed and confidence. To find out more, check out the show notes.
Well, it's already gone pretty far. A lot of companies don't make it to first in human.
Yes.
You guys have done that now. What's the journey been like so far?
Yeah, it's been a very exciting roller coaster, I would say. Yeah, it's, you could do for sure a Netflix program out of it. I mean, it's, and I think that's why people are so excited is that, like, there's always some surprise, some exciting moments, thrilling moments. Just maybe to get back to things, put things in perspective. Since I joined, there've been so different phases. I've been fortunate along with Gérard Ascouet, who was the chairman, to close the first round of funding back in 2016. So we're able to go from that 5-employee core group to a more structured R&D group. And then in 2018, from 2018 on, I brought another few more experienced people to complement the leadership team. So we had amazing LVAD engineers, Travis Snyder, amazing LVAD manufacturer gentleman was Michael Webb, and someone leading the clinical from the US, Paul Cornelissen. And so we took it from, basically really R&D-ish into a really product and getting to first in human. With the help of two ladies were instrumental. Dawn Sadlowski would join as quality leader, but eventually became the operation leader. And I had an amazing CFO for quite some time, which played a key role into that. It was called Magali Duresh, to really help the project management to get through that point of first in human.
Fantastic. You don't get this far without fundraising, right?
Yeah, and just maybe obviously this, a lot, so there's a lot of, long-term engineers who've been in this and who've been critical and we're doing the actual work. But I was just reflecting on the leadership team. Yeah, so fundraising, we've been, so we had a first round, 15.5 million round in October 2016. Then we got some grants, and the French government has been amazing there. And eventually we got this C round, which, that's different closing, but eventually a 60 million plus round to take us to first in human. So the investors so obviously Sofinova has been one of the key investors since the beginning. BPI France, which is the kind of French sovereign fund with Philippe Boucheron, is a critical backer of CorWave since 2013, so before my time actually. And so we have a group of life science investors. So Novo is involved, although Novo Holdings with Emmanuel Coutenceau. Isios Capital has been involved too. And we have Seventure, who's been there for quite some time, as a French investor. And then we got the intervention of EIC Fund, which was critical, instrumental to the C round, the 60 million plus. So we actually were the first investment. So that was kind of a historic moment, when they invest in CorWave. That was the first time the European Commission, through one of its subsidiary, which is what it is, did a direct equity investment in the company since 1957 and the Treaty of Rome and the creation of the European Commission. So that was just amazing. And so yes, that's been instrumental. It acted kind of another sovereign fund, if you will, on the side of BPI France. And we've been having some family controlled entrepreneurial investors too. That's been very, very helpful for us.
It's a very nice mixed bag of investment, and I kind of wanted to ask you about it. You've been lucky enough to have a background working with Sofinova. You understand how a lot of these companies operate. Yeah. If you was to give advice to other founders and CEOs right now about raising and going about this, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say if you can avoid raising, I would say it's probably better, because not all businesses are meant to raise money. Obviously, LVAD, there's no way you can bootstrap that, right? So, but as a founder, I think, so obviously, if you raise money and depending on your business, that's gonna, you're gonna get a lot of good advice, great network with these investors, but that might not be necessary, or you can maybe just remain friends and family. And if you look at the math, most of the companies raising are not raising. So that's why I'm saying, if you don't need to raise, just don't raise. Don't waste time there. I mean, the other day I was having lunch with an entrepreneur friend. A friend was telling me he was in the military business, So he was visionary, made that long ago, but he basically never raised money, and he's doing like 30-ish millions in sales, and great. You know, he had some contracts with the government. It's way smarter. So first, if you don't need to raise money, don't raise money. Then I would say, yeah, raising money. I think there's once you've proven out that you need to raise money, it means that you probably have a lot of capital requirements, that your business model is going to be going through a J curve, etc., and that it makes sense, right? It's math is going to play out. And so I think in medtech, what matters the most, at least early on, is showing a clinical benefit, because that's what, you know, this industry stands for. That's what eventually acquirers are going to buy. That's what eventually is going to make you sell devices. So even if you're not acquired, and you can, you know, live your life as an independent company, it's something that you can do, right? So I think that's core to the thesis. And I think these conference in particular, I mean, has been eye-opening for me early on when I joined CorWave to really focus on that, which is then as an investor, I believe they want to see that if the founder has not done it before, or has been surrounded by people who have that background or pedigree, and I think it makes total sense, right? I mean, to me as an operator, I mean, the most important thing is the team, because you can start with a crappy technology, which was not the case for us, right? But whatever, if you have a good team, they're going to figure out and they're going to do something great out of it. And it's difficult, and capital equity is something scarce, right? So the way to protect that is actually to have great operators that are not going to learn down the road. You always learn things, but they're not going to learn how to operate and what's the correct methodology to do things. Not going to do basic mistakes. And to do that, you just have to have a experienced team. And it's not only experiences, and I think one of the gentlemen was in this podcast say the same stuff. I was, you know, listening is people who are familiar with, or that have the great DNA to operate in a startup, which is so different.
Yeah.
And the way I do approach that maybe I should not get my hiring tricks in that podcast, so I'm maybe gonna censor myself. But I think it's key that people understand what a startup is and understand that they need to do a lot of things themselves. And I think where it's difficult as you grow, you still need to have people who know how to manage and to delegate, right? So there's a balance, not so easy.
And then I want to just zoom in on something that you spoke about previously. It was, you know, the clinical outcome side of things. You know, that's probably what's coming for you, next for you guys, right? You've got to really focus on that. Ideally, what is the perfect 5 years for you? What do you want to see clinically from the business?
Yeah, so from down the road, yeah, no, I think so. We're looking to replicate the great outcomes, you know, with the first patient. And eventually, what does it mean for us is being able to show that the device is safe. And so that's, you know, typically CMAR trial. We will need to show in a trial that in terms of survival, we're similar to the Mate 3. And then for the US, there's different endpoints, but that's going to be fundamentally the same story as how do we compare with the current device. And so along the way, what is very unique to CorWave and makes it pretty interesting for different stakeholders is that the centers that are going to be in our trial represent a very large portion of the market. So even though you're a small startup, you can generate quickly revenues. To give you a sense, the pivotal trial we're going to start soon, there's going to be centers that represent over 25% of the European market. So it's just 10 centers. It's crazy concentration. And the same pattern is also visible in the US. So typically in trials, centers represent 40 to 50% of the market. You know, and so the day you get approval, you can leverage that and, you know, have a launch pad. So I'm looking forward to seeing our device, you know, serving patients in a meaningful way and eventually, you know, showing on real endpoints what we're observing in the clinic today. and the company is scaling at the same time to serve these patients, manufacturing, clinical operations, one day sales and marketing, so that we can transform that therapy and improve upon what's been done so far, which is, don't get me wrong, we're as we say, on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, right, you've got I love what you're talking about. The clinical data is obviously one of the biggest endpoints for you. The other part that comes with that is adoption, right, as well. You've got to make sure the surgeons adopt to it. What are you guys doing right now to de-risk that?
To de-risk the adoption part of it?
Yeah.
So, we've been working with these centers for the last 10 years or so. So as we develop the product, we want to make sure that they say, okay, this functionality makes sense. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So we have already a pretty strong established relationship with the centers that represent 25% of the open market. So what we need to show along with them is that actually the outcomes are, as good as the current device, and eventually better on some aspects. And then that they'll use the device, right? And they're looking forward to. Actually, they'll buy the device and they're going to use it before as part of the trial. Yeah, that makes sense. So
definitely, no, it absolutely does. And we spoke about where you're looking at in terms of the business in 5 years, clinically and product-wise. What do you want to also build? You mentioned that the team that you're building is very important to you. Are you going to try and keep that culture as you grow? What is it that you're currently building inside?
Yeah, so I think what is unique also to CorWave is that, as a strategist told me one day, this is an innovation that has legs. So there's not only this first product that can really transform this life-saving therapy, which is LVADs, which is really critical to heart failure, and has significant business opportunity with billion-dollar exit in the past. But also there is the avenue to build. It's a second product, so it's not the same procedure, not the same indication. It's really different. It's not the same flow. But this is eventually a minimally invasive cardiac assist device. So it can basically bring the benefits of cardiac assist, which is huge survival benefits. You're talking about like 40 to 60 points of survival at 2 years, to older patients, potentially up to, that's going to be obviously exclusion criteria, but when you define heart failure, FPAF is like 50% of the heart failure population. Heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. Potentially one day, earlier patients. Also improve the situation for pediatric patients who don't have a great device right now. So all of that is super exciting, and I think it creates a lot of opportunities inside for our team. Like younger engineers or younger managers to grow or different programs. And as we go, in the clinic and commercial, there's going to be other great opportunities for everyone. So we definitely one key thing for us is to make sure there are some avenues for great talent to develop, which has been the case so far. This is super exciting to think about the next 5 years, which eventually will be definitely in the commercial phase by that point. Getting really close to something very interesting on a second product also. So
Good. And to do so, I think everyone in the business has to have a North Star, right? Something that they're working towards. For you, if you was to look back in 10, 15, 20 years, what do you want CorWave to be known for?
Well, I think a couple of things. So from the product, a company that really abides by its mission, which is to help cardiologists and cardiac surgeons save heart failure patients and offer them an active life. And when it comes to the way the company operates, or the way people feel within the company, I think we have a great team spirit, and I'm really, what I appreciate with the people I'm working is these people are really bright but very humble, down to earth, and pretty caring about others. And I think if we can keep that would just be amazing. And it's something people say about this company is like, it's kind of a unique atmosphere. You're gonna go in other companies that might be sometimes more difficult in interactions, and just not a very caring environment. I think I would love us to be able to keep that. And actually that's the environment I enjoy. So I guess as long as I'll be CEO, probably will be able to keep that. I don't know, because not it's not only relying on the CEO, obviously not. There are few key people, and Carl, I would have mentioned, was a long-time CTO, was critical to that, and I think a few individuals. Gérard, I think, is very much also in that. Chairman is very much into that thing. So I think we've been able to keep that, and I love to the company to keep thriving with that culture.
I love that. And what do you think is the one single biggest thing that could stop CorWave?
Mistakes can be very, very dangerous to a company like us. Operational mistakes, strategic mistakes, and any type of headwinds that is externals. We have to be very humble and realize that we need to execute our plan, and otherwise, things can go wrong for sure.
Okay, and the one thing that I want to ask you, and I love the fact that you didn't come from a traditional medtech background. It was the same. I spoke with Wayne Patterson from Anteris Technologies, came from pharma. And so one thing I asked him is, what would you tell people from outside of industry to get them to encourage them to come into the industry and to give this a go? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think the thing that I've seen actually others coming from, for example, automotive industry. I think there's many bridges from a technical standpoint. Because it's typically automotive industry is a good example. LivaNova, which had was kind of it's an interesting company, was founded by resistant people from the World War II as a radio company, and evolved and never really was professionalized in manufacturing. So I decided one day to professionalize, and they brought people from manufacturing industry, from automotive industry. And that was a big leap, and I think I've seen many people from manufacturing coming from automotive industry or other industries. I think there's definitely bridges. I think when it comes to other function can be done, but probably can be more challenging if people are further out in their career, right? I guess doing some management consulting at some point, or some investing or whatsoever, can maybe bridge the gap with a very different industry. Yeah. But it's definitely doable. I think there are a few people have done that. And I think it's when it's more on the business side of things. It's more like, to me, it sounds more like exceptions. Okay. But I might be wrong. I count myself as an exception. I would not say it's reproducible what I've done. I have the other example of a good friend who's running Apta Medical, which is another MD Start company. He was in the web industry actually too, and he did a PhD in because he was very strong engineering background, and he did a PhD, and then eventually he was offered this position at Apta. So. Would you advise to do that? You're like 35 or 37, do a PhD, you have your wife and kids, and you go for a PhD. I don't know, So, so other examples, people coming from management consulting that felt like they could do, so that you can do things like that, right? So, but I think at least it's probably not so straightforward. Yeah. But it's definitely worth doing it, And there are so many opportunities, so many things to change. And I would say, in particular for executives who come with experience in Europe, and you probably may or may not share that, but I think there's a lack of experienced manager across the board, because most of the management teams and a bit down, these management teams are in the US. So there are some opportunities, really. Yeah. So for people to join, and it's a great place to be, but difficult to transition for sure. Yeah, I would say. Maybe I'm being too honest there, but
definitely no. I think it's right there, and I think that's probably where we want to close off the pod today. I think it was absolutely brilliant having you on. Thank you for sharing so much about the business, and I truly hope that you guys go all the way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and time is flying. I didn't see that there was already at the end of it, so I really enjoyed the conversation. And thank you so much for having me again.
Thanks for listening to the Crux of Cardio. If there's one thing this space has taught me, both personally and professionally, it's that progress in cardiovascular care is never the result of one individual. It's built by ecosystems, by teams, by people willing to take the long bets on hard problems. At Crux, our mission is to support that ecosystem through talent, capital and community. The podcast is one small part of that effort. a place to share the real stories from people shaping the future of cardiovascular care. If you found value in today's conversation, I would love for you to follow the show and share it with someone building in this space. And if you're a founder, operator, or investor working on something meaningful in the cardiovascular care space, we'd love to hear from you.